So those are some of the things that we measure in terms of our outputs, quantitative data. And if you see it as a part of the storytelling of your vision, your mission, it's not so bad. And everyone's mission is going to be different, right? Everyone's mission is going to be unique. So what I would encourage all of us to consider is, how do we find quantitative data outputs that help us see if we are going toward that call? And that's really all it is. In every context, it's a little bit different. As I mentioned, we are more of a traditional church, so we measure some more traditional data. But even with that, we tweak it. We really are not necessarily interested in how many people are at church on Sunday. That's not really our definition of success. Our definition of success is how many people are serving, how many people are in small groups. And our ultimate definition of success is really how many people are discipling and leading others. And so we measure all of those things to ensure, are we fulfilling our unique call.
So before you go on to outcomes, because I know you have some fascinating stories there too, I just want to clarify what I'm hearing, make sure I'm hearing it well. It sounds like because 4 Points started out of a real sense of need for particularly second and third generation Asian Americans to actually find a spiritual home that works for them, that feels like home, that can be shaped by people of this demographic, then because spiritual home is the goal, you've had that as the objective, that is the sense of call, that is the vocation, and the why. Too many people are feeling alone and they need this spiritual home. And so then you've come back down and here's the objective and here are the key results. The 75% of folks will be involved in partnering. 75% of folks will be involved in small groups if we're really, really, really creating the kind of home that people want to be a part of. And so am I hearing you well? It's a question. It's like the objective is there, the call, the vocation, the reason for being is right there. And as a result, you have done the work of coming up with a few specifics of what it looks like if this is a really spiritual home.
That's absolutely right.
Okay.
And because it's really hard to measure one's spiritual vitality, right? It's really hard to measure one's spiritual walk.
Yeah.
And so this isn't the be all and end all, but we want to ensure, okay, if this is our vision, if this is our call, if this is our why, here is our strategy in implementing this. But how do we know that we're successful in our strategy? How do we know that what we're doing is really helping us achieve this call? We got to measure.
How often do you get together to kind of compare notes? I mean, I know you measure every week, but how often do you compile and talk as a leadership team?
Well, we, as a staff, we look at our data weekly during our staff meetings.
Okay.
As a board, we are not organized yet, so we have a board, and we meet once a month, and we look at our data once a month.
Oh, okay.
And then as a leadership team, we have retreats, and so every year we really unpack all the data once a year to make sure that, hey, year over year, are we fulfilling our call? Are we fulfilling our mission? And there are times where we look at the data and like, hey, you know what? This probably is not helping us achieve our call. So based on the data, we will cut it.
Sure.
Or, hey, this here is helping us achieve our call. Then we will actually put more effort and energy into that.
Yeah, pivot. Or pruning. The good old John 15, I am the true vine, and basically the pruning for greater fruit. That's a big part of what metrics is. So interestingly, and I can't wait to hear about the outcomes part as well, because I know 4 Points has been really intentional about that. But the objective then with the key results that you all are aiming for, that you think if you're seeing these results, then it really is a sign that this is a spiritual home. It's interesting because the way you have done it mirrors exactly what the business world says. And we know God speaks through all languages and through all people, and that God speaks powerfully, often to the church, even from outside the church, or in unexpected ways. And the business world, everybody from Google to even Bono and his fundraising efforts that are supposed to change the world, they call these OKRs. The objective, and they actually encourage all businesses, be it a for-profit business, a nonprofit, or any other organizations that probably look a lot more like New Worshiping Communities, neighborhood associations, teacher groups, etc., to go with OKRs. The O stands for objective. What's your why, your vocation, your call, your concrete purpose? What specific changes are you and your community called to be about? The KR? It stands for Key Results. So if you have people in your church who would resonate with that, or if you have people in your new worshiping community for whom an OKR would be a phrase that helps, then use it, because it is out there. There's a book called Measure What Matters. I use that phrase over and over again, measure what matters, because this template that we have to measure these certain things isn't true. We are each called to mattering in a different way and to living out our faith and our relationship with God in a different way. So we're going to measure different things. So this OKR, it's an objective and then key results. And staying with OKRs, doing this monthly, in some cases, doing it every quarter or every 6 months or at minimum every year, it really does help you pivot and regroup.
Absolutely. I think that's spot on. And at 4 Points, we call it KPIs, key performance indicators, but it's exactly the same thing. But I think what, again, is the key here, the operative word in that is measure what matters. And so I don't want you to get lost and we measure attendance, but that's our denominator. So we need to have a denominator in order for us to measure our numerator, right? And not to get all algebra-ish on everybody here, but we can't tell if 75% of our community are in partnerships. We can't tell if 75% of our community are in small groups unless we have a denominator. And that's why we take our Sunday attendance. But that's not what we determine as a measure of success. That's just the baseline. Success is how many people are serving, how many people are in small groups, how many people are in leadership, how many people are discipling others. For us, those are the measures of success. And for us, those are the indicators of us fulfilling our call. But in order for us to do that, we have to have a common denominator, which is how many people are at our church. And so to us, that's just the beginning point. That's really not the most important thing by any stretch of the imagination. But we need that data in order for us to be able to extrapolate additional, more important key data.
You know, my sister-in-law worked for Deloitte, and they did a 2-year study on how to build engagement. And they found after 2 years of some very high-level examination that the number one way to build engagement is to have clearly written down goals. That was it. And they discovered that clearly written down goals that were then widely communicated was the key to building up a community, a sense of participation, a sense of shared energy and mission and vision, and that written down piece that you all do, and that you write it down and then you measure everything every month. Not everybody has to do every month again, but at least having the objective and then a few key things that you want to look for as things you can measure is a really important piece, and I'm really encouraged. Of course, it's not a silver bullet, and we all know this. There is no silver bullet. Not one thing we're talking about in this whole accelerator will be a silver bullet. All 5 things combined is not a silver bullet. This is doing discernment work. And that is ongoing, it's active, it's living, it's pliable, there are pivots, because we are following a living God.
Absolutely. If I could just add one more thing to that is we live in an information-driven world now, and I see this as just information, collecting information to make sure, again, going back to our really original statement of why. And the more information I can have, the better then I could discern whether we are really meeting a need that is in our broader community, whether we're actually meeting the call and the vision, the mission that we have. So it's just information. And anecdotally, one of the other things that, for us, that really collecting all this data, and we share it. We don't just keep it to the leadership, we share it with the church. And what's interesting is that the broader community then feels a sense of excitement. Oh, we are actually fulfilling our call. We are actually fulfilling our mission. It's not just a feeling. It's not some ephemeral kind of sense of experience that they may have, but there's actually data that supports, oh, wow, our church, our ministry is actually doing what we have set out to do. So it's actually encouraging for the broader body for us. That's what we've noticed as well.
I love that. And it's so true. There's so much frustration and ways to be thwarted in life these days. And so actually claiming and celebrating what we are doing well at those moments is part of the gifts of life. And but one other thing about sharing the data, this also is really huge for funders. If you are hoping for outside funders, if you are not a part of a new worshiping community that has within its own self the ability to fund everything that you feel called to be and do, well, this data is the kind of stuff that I'm seeing more and more funders asking for. They care too. They want to make sure that their money is actually going to real change and to make a real impact in the world, which is why we're calling this measuring impact, because that in the end is it. And so far we've only talked about one half. We've talked about outputs, and those are important to measure, but you also got to measure outcomes in the church, because outcomes are what we're really after. And outcomes are those changes in our lives as we, I don't know what your objectives are, but as we become more forgiving, as we learn how to better neighbor with each other, as we stand together to really effect some social change, some racial healing, some environmental sensitivity and course correction, whatever it is, as we do these things together, it's the outcomes that matter the most. Here's how Liz and Nick Johnson of the Ways community measure their outcomes.
We'd love to continue to see the number of folks that work out with us also join us to seek health not only in their physical health, but also in their mental, emotional, and spiritual health too. A lot of that does take place on the gym floor. It's amazing how people open up their lives to you as a coach, even apart from being seen as a pastor or a new worship community leader, but also in our worship gatherings, to be able to see folks feel safe in that community, to be a part of a space where they can bring their spiritual questions to and find truth and acceptance in the community there. There's also a measure of health metrics that we want to see happen. We want to move the needle on community health. A lot of migrants to the West, especially from refugee communities, might come from places where they don't experience a lot of the same metabolic diseases that we face here. And when they come here, and oftentimes might not have access to nutrition, either because of financially or because of the food desert, they all of a sudden start to show some of the same kind of metabolic diseases that we face here. And so I would measure impact also by the different ways that people are living healthier lifestyles. Anecdotally, one of the guys we worked with came in here and he wasn't happy with his body. He told me that whenever folks would take a group picture, he'd always hide the background because he was ashamed of his body. And he's like, Nick, now when people take a group photo, I'm right up there in the front. He's like, I'm actually like how I look now. And for me, that was one of the most exciting things to hear, that someone now has confidence in their body, confidence in who they are in community, and isn't hiding behind others anymore. And that's because of what they've been able to do here in the gym and in community. And we want to see more stories like that.
We also measure it by how integrated beyond just the time working out together, but as we think about building community, that it's beyond, our workout times or even our Sunday gatherings, but how many birthday parties are we going to? How many new babies are we celebrating? Where are the spaces that our lives are integrated beyond just inside the gym? Because I feel at that point, community really is being forged when this space and these people become something beyond even workout buddies.
The measuring we need to learn how to do must, of necessity, be much more focused and concrete than simply a hoped-for wish. The outcome the church needs is the hope-filled, health-filled, excitement-filled, disturbing differences that God dreams about for our lives and for our communities. Measuring is not worrying about what we don't have. It isn't waiting for what might happen if we just keep doing what we do. The outcomes we need are those deep and even disturbingly clear descriptions of what we believe can be different if God gets involved. Again, this is no longer problem solving. It is possibility hunting.